Harry Tanguy, former police sergeant, is with us to start with. Harry, good afternoon to you. I mean, on that point, to begin with, less aggressive stop and search. I remember seeing the videos of the Life on Mars days when people were a bit handsy and, cops had a very different brief when dealing with kids on the street. But the last time I looked, we appear to have the most polite police force in the world when it comes to, hello, I'm PC Smithers, I'm from Bethnal Green Police Station, I'm going to stop and search you, are you OK with that? I mean, we seem to have quite a protocol in place. Stop and search aggressive, is that a reasonable way to define it?
Oh, how the wheel turns, because frontline police officers have backed off because they realise they're being criticised, they're being suspended from duty, they're often being charged for offences, of course. And I think where so-called community leaders, often self-imposed, we need to be very careful who we're listening to. Yes, we don't want overzealous police officers out there. But what we do want is our politicians and our superintendents and above to go out with the front line, not on a 2 o'clock in the afternoon talking about the problems of neighbourhood policing, which we see on our television, but actually going out at 2 or 3 in the morning, carrying out stop searches. And you'll realise the great majority will be people of previous convictions who are quite dangerous or dealing drugs. And guess what? They don't want to be stop searched. So what are they going to do? They're going to make full advantage of anything they've got towards them. And that means film, be aggressive, be obstructive, blame it on their colour, their youth, their sex, or whatever it may be. But they will know, and those police officers will know they're filmed, every step is being watched. Yeah. They're coming to the point where they're saying, look, if you don't want us to stop people, we won't, because it's not fun. It's dirty, it's dangerous. It's confrontational, which is something I could do without every day of my working life. Yeah. Why don't I just back off, do the bare necessity, and then perhaps I'll get through my 30 years without being sacked or suspended or going to prison. And
an edited video from, an onlooker's camera could have me suspended for about 3 years by the time the IPC have kicked in. So not worth my trouble.
It wouldn't be so bad if there was a few bosses with some backbone, but even those bosses with backbone would be absolutely cascaded by politicians who are there for 5 minutes. They want to appear to be doing the right thing. No, London in particular is in a hell of a state at the moment. I've just had a friend of mine who's had his car completely robbed of everything within it on a nice little afternoon in what looked like quite a good suburb. And I said, what the hell were you doing leaving your stuff in your car, even out of sight? You can't do that nowadays. And I think it needs robust, firm policing where it doesn't always look pretty. Policing doesn't look pretty when somebody is confrontational or resistant, because immediately you put hands on and someone swings back, what are you doing? Don't touch me. The onlooker, who is not experienced in this sort of thing, will think, well, why's the police officer stopped him? He didn't have anything on him. Yeah. And when a police stop a group of 6 people because they've sent to this group because one's got a knife, of course, the statistics hate that. 1 success in 6 people, knife recovered. Everyone else would say that was a really good result. Knife off the street, someone nicked, someone has perhaps stopped being stabbed. No, statistics say that's a terrible 1 in 6 hit rate. It's terrible. We need to have a bit of realism now. Robust, firm policing, fair policing. But as long as we're pandering around saying less aggressive, we're going to be back where we started. We're not going to get any further.
Ken Hines, let's bring Ken in, chair of Haringey's Independent Stop and Search Monitoring Group. I mean, just respond, if you would, Ken, to Harry's point there that, there's a lot of fluff around this idea that, we've got to be less aggressive. I mean, most officers that you would speak to today say, well, we're never aggressive in the first place. We can be robust, though, and in certain situations you have to be.
I don't know what rose-tinted glasses he's looking through, but on the ground, I've been on the ground for the last 30 years, and I haven't seen much change. What he's describing there may be a minority, even so, an insignificant minority that might affect. But the figures I look at each month shows quite clearly that that 9 out of 10 stops and search lead to no arrest or no further action. And my thing is simply this, that interaction could lead to that youngster being stopped and scarred, emotionally scarred at the very least. And all too often, when we see it goes rogue and they're using excessive force, throwing people to the ground, putting them in handcuffs, and then expecting to have a dialogue. It just doesn't happen. The police need, as one of the 10 principles, to police by consent of that community. Don't rubbish what those young people are telling you, that they need to be kinder in their interaction, because, as I said, they haven't got a very good hit rate. Let's talk about the weapons. Less than 3% of their stop and search are for weapon, and less than 1% may lead to them finding a weapon.
Ken, 3,500. Ken,
that gets more knife off our street than what the police are doing.
3,500 weapons, Ken, are not on the street as a result of stop and search last year. That's good.
How many stop and search? 500,000? About 500,000 stops and search to get 3,500 knives off? What that equates to less than one a week per borough. That's what it equates to. And to me, that's not a good return. If I was a CEO with those kind of bad returns, I would be sacked.
Harry, it's not the numbers don't stack up. It's disproportionate.
Yeah, the CEO would be sacked, but we're not talking profit here. We're talking lives. Look, there's no dispute here. I'm not arguing with him where this gentleman. Forgive me his name.
Ken.
Ken, sorry.
Ken, Harry,
I'm not
Harry,
arguing with
Ken.
Ken. Each stop search should be polite. It should be official. It should be so that. And I would often think, if I didn't get a thank you, and you're not like the others. You're great. That's what I used to get all the time. But that's what my colleagues used to get all the time. So we're not arguing with that. It should be fair. It should be good. But 1 in 10 hit rate is bloody good when you're talking about weapons, unless you don't want proactive policing either. And when members of public send police to a group of lads to say, I've seen a knife, they've got a knife and they're genuine, they've backed up, they've given their name and whatever, then what do you think those police should do? Well, there's more than 10. The stats are going to look terrible. So what is confusing as well? You got it, yes, police by consent, but consent of who? The person who doesn't want to be stop searched because they've got a criminal record as long as they're armed, or the community who I listen to through counsellors who say they'd love more stop search in their policing community. And this is what I'm saying. Who is actually choosing these community leaders, or the other community just too frightened to say, no, we want more community? And people have got to learn as well. If there is resistance for police officers, then they should expect a firm hand. And that is what is called excessive force in some fields. That's not excessive force, because guess what? When you have to put hands on, that is minimum force. And you can't just say, well, he didn't have anything on him, so what was the point? Well, hindsight's a wonderful thing as well. If you speak politely to a police officer, you'll get spoken politely back again. And we need a little bit more of that. Respect back to the police, and things will run a lot smoother.
Ken.
Listen, let me say this much to you. We talk about the ripple effect. So one person's bad experience becomes everybody else that he touches and goes with that. What that then adds to, instead of police using good resources from the community to add to their intel, there's lose a whole stripe of people who no longer have no faith in the police and see them as an occupying force. My thing is simply this. When they start taking the law into their own hand and start killing one another, what are we going to say? You're going to say, oh, look at these ferretic. We need more stops and search. Wrong. You need to deal with people emotional well-being, their triggers. If you are going to trigger them, they're going to look at you as the ops and will not support anything positive in our community. I feel the backlash. I'm on the front line. I have to deal with the fallout. But you sitting in your ivory tower and talking about your theory, it's not working on the ground. I would ask you to come on the ground with me for one night only, and have a conversation with some of the young people who's affected by stop and search.
Ken, I can't speak for Harry, and he'll come back in a moment. I'm pretty sure he's been on the ground many times in these sort of areas. Let me ask you this. Let me ask. Okay.
And have a dialogue.
Let me ask you this though, Ken. If you Firstly, stop and search, why would that have to be game-changing in terms of your views of the... And, you know, I mentioned at the beginning, anyone can YouTube a video of, you know, how polite the situation is. The police officer announces who they are, which station they are from. They explain what's going to happen. They're filmed from every which way you can imagine, whether it's up a lamppost, on a doorbell, from your mate's iPhone, or the body cam. So there's that. But secondly, and so in two parts this question to you, Ken, Secondly, if there's 10 kids, 15, 16, 17 years old, and they're at 3 o'clock in the morning and they're out, and you are suspecting that one of them might be carrying a knife, you might have to search all 10, right? You may have to, though that would be your 1 in 10. Well, 1 in 10, that's not very good. You're not going to search one and go, well, he's the one with the knife, it's not any of the others. You're going to check everybody, aren't you?
No, that's not stop and search. You need to have, if you use a reasonable ground, you use what the law says there. You've got to have reasonable suspicion that you're going to find.
It's 3 o'clock in the morning, you're 15 and there's 10 of you on a street corner. That's reasonable grounds, isn't it?
You still have to weigh things up. And it's, as I said, it's called go wisely. You let them know what their rights are. I often look at the police body-worn videos, and we rate the police body-worn videos that we see, live videos. We rate them on a traffic light system to saying, red for something that we think we're seriously concerned with, orange because they've got learning to do with that, and green because it's been done professionally. We also got another one called Green Plus, when they've done something exceptional on their stop and search. So that's looking at it from a community perspective and the law to saying what is the best result. Okay. That way we will get better results and better interaction.
Are you
at the Hendon Police Academy?
Okay.
I train these youngsters, these young police officers, and have interactions with them, right? And hear what they're saying and help shape their mind to get better outcomes on the interaction they're going to have with young people on my community, in my community.
All right, Harry. So the overarching point that Ken is making is that there's clearly a diplomatic issue in the way that these are dealt with, and you know what we thought was life on Mars territory from 30 years ago is kind of still going on. It's leaving young kids scarred.
Mm. Yeah, and Ken mentioned the ripple effect, and the ripple effect I received as a police officer was that everyone was getting beaten up in the cells. It was my friend was beaten up in the cell. Were you beaten up? No, I was never beaten. Okay. So, and that's all I ever heard. So be careful, be very cautious of the ripple effect. I'm not naive enough to say, Ken, that this never happened, okay? I'm not saying. I'll also concede in the fact that there's a real danger now that experienced police officer, I was on the front line in city, countries and villages, but cities such, you know, and it was pretty hairy, and I was on the front line for 30 years. I was never in an office. I was answering 999 calls the whole time. But so I've sort of got a fair idea of, I must have done thousands of stop searches. So my concern is, with all the experience going, you're having a much lesser experience, especially in London, when people are just hacked off, police officers are. And therefore, you don't have that experience behind saying, right, this is how, I mean, I've got tactics to keep things down. So if someone raises at me, I would say, you know, if I'd say, please don't confuse my politeness as weakness. If you continue like this, I will stick you on your backside. Now, shall we start again? So giving that, now, shall we start it? So I've imposed authority. I'm confident, but I'm giving a chance of an olive branch here. Shall we start again? And that would work a lot. And it's things like that which can be taught, but is learned through experience as well. Because otherwise you're ending in a fight because someone's larging up saying, what are you going to do about it, copper? Which is what's happened. And a lot of cops don't know how to deal with that. And because they're young and inexperienced, it's not their fault. And I think we're holding them up to fail, basically. And so, yeah, I'll concede with that, Ken. That's the problem we're going to get. And I think it's going to get worse, especially if those same officers feel that anything they do is going to be jumped on, and even can be looked at you, Ken, and your colleagues who aren't in the front line wearing a uniform dealing with it. Some would describe as, I'm not saying you personally, but and some people would describe as the 95 jury looking at it, and they don't have the atmosphere, they don't have the information coming in from the reporting person, because they'll be complaining if nothing's done about it, about these views. But yes, there is go wisely, and you can't just stop search random people. There has to be something else there. And police officers are very well aware of this, because they know it's the first thing that will get them kicked off the force.
And just a final word, Ken. Is there such a thing as good stop and search? Can it be used effectively?
Of course it can be used effectively. It's all about the dialogue. And I would say, I won't talk about as police officers putting anybody in their backside. I would put it on the aggressor to say, why are you bringing that negative energy into this space? It's
because
not that
it's going to end in tears if you didn't get control of it.
I would turn it around and put it on them. I'm here in service of my community. What are you doing? So I would turn how you get the best out of people. It takes two to go. It takes two to go to war. It takes two to go to war. One to make the peace.
No, they won't listen to you if you do that.
I'm a security. I'm on the door. I'm at Arsenal. I deal with thousands every other week.
Ken,
coming
you
through
just be
the
your
Arsenal station.
whole demeanour now is
But
you would rile
look,
someone who you
look,
disagree
you
with,
had
and
your
they would
space,
get angry
you
with
had
you.
your space to
You're
make
not a
your
calming
comment.
effect.
You had your space to make. So please do me the honour to let me there sum up, because we haven't got long here.
All right,
And
20 seconds, Ken, if you could, sir.
If you want to have a conversation off screen, that's fine. But I'm saying simply this: that we're not getting the right sort of police officer at the front. If people are too scared to be using themselves in a leadership role, that's not the front line is not the role for them or for you to experiment. I see this at the front. I see them when I'm interacting with some of these new recruits. Some of them are no older than sixth formers and look that way, and they haven't got the confidence, but yet we put them in the front line in dangerous situation.
Okay.
They are dangerous. They can be a danger to themselves, they can be a danger to their colleagues, and most importantly, they're a danger to the community who they're having that interaction with.
All right.
Lucky to have them.
Go on, Harry, very quickly.
But we're lucky to have those inexperienced young police officers. If it wasn't for them, we'd have nobody else. And we've got to be careful of the next generation of cops, because we're severely letting it down. We think things aren't going to get worse. They are, because they're totally disillusioned.
All right.
How they're being treated in the job.
Harry, thank you. Harry Tanguy, former police sergeant, very robust and